I could feel very high.
It's a new day on the Enterprise, and we've had mail. A school class, that of Tucker's nephew specifically, has sent us some art as our exploration mission is big news back home. Speaking of which, we've just found a comet that isn't in the Vulcan database, and it's a big lad too. That makes it noteworthy enough to follow for a while despite T'Pol's lack of interest, so we do. She buggers off to her quarters to read something on her computer instead. Whatever she's reading has her hooked, as she's looking at a tablet when she visits the mess hall later. Tucker tries a little small talk and, noticing she's distracted by what she has, asks if she's okay. She tells him she's fine and leaves. It's the next day when we discover the comet we're following has some rare stuff in it, so rare in fact that even the Vulcans haven't seen much of it. It's too far inside the spaceberg for teleporting, so we're going to hop over in a shuttle and do a bit of mining. Maybe, anyway. A Vulcan ship's just turned up, so we give them a call. The lad in charge is a chance to roll out the wheel of names again, so let's see how we'll be addressing him. Captain Ack Bladder, provided by Ensign Lido's son. Captain Ack Bladder was in the area and decided to come take a look, not at the comet itself, as they don't really care about such things, but at what we're doing with it. He declines an offer to join our little away team, perhaps because Vulcans aren't daft enough to go comet surfing, but wants to continue observing. It's not the first time we've had Vulcans yapping at our heels either. There was another a few weeks back that buggered off as soon as we approached them. T'Pol suggests the answers are likely innocent, but that doesn't stop Archer feeling decidedly suspicious. As Reed and Travis fly over to the spaceberg, which apparently has enough mass to be sporting a standard gravity by the way, Tucker's found something odd. It's an encrypted message according to Hoshi and from our Vulcan observers. He gets Archer involved when he tracks the delivery to T'Pol's quarters. As we're currently being observed, and T'Pol agreed no communication with the Vulcans would be kept secret from him, Archer feels justified in wanting it decoded. We're saying thank you to the school class who sent us pictures, and we're doing it by answering questions. We've received a variety of technical queries, one of which has Tucker trying to avoid explaining that we sort of, eat our own shit a little bit. While most of the cast are busy with that, Reed and Travis are working on our spaceberg. Well, one of them is. Travis is cocking about making a snowman, but you could argue that's more responsible than the explosives Reed is setting. Back on the ship, Hoshi's finished decrypting our mystery Vulcan message. She's not read it though and hands it over to Tucker. He's visiting Archer shortly afterwards to explain that we done fucked up. It's a matter of a personal nature, and Archer takes his word for it that it would be wrong to share it any further. Tucker's so mortified that, despite having a perfectly good reason to suspect foul play, he feels he needs to go and tell T'Pol so he can apologize. She takes the news pretty well, which is to say that she only invites him to ransack her quarters once. Perhaps realizing how utterly dodgy the whole thing looked helps, as does knowing Tucker's the only one who's aware of her situation. T'Pol's called away before she has the chance to reconsider not killing him. Archer's planning to invite Captain Ack Bladder over to prove we're not bumbling idiots and wants some tips on etiquette. He also makes it clear this is so the guy will be reassured and subsequently piss off somewhere else. All of which is becoming a bit much for T'Pol. She visits Phlox with some physical complaints, which he diagnoses as a tension headache, probably not helped by being unable to sleep. He offers the chance to talk about whatever's clearly on her mind, and when she declines, suggests finding somebody she's willing to discuss it with, if possible. A little later on, as Reed and Travis are busy exploding both the snow Vulcan and the surface of their spaceberg, we're having dinner. Captain Ack Bladder has little interest in being here, and even less in pretending that he does. Archer tires of being the only one making an effort, and instead decides it's time for him to leave, but not before bluntly asking when he intends to piss off and stop watching us. Ack Bladder dodges answering the question by giving an insult instead, and leaves after saying some words in Vulcan to T'Pol. She does not share what was said. We have a problem. Turns out that kabooming an object in space can cause it to change direction. The Spaceberg is now rotating a little faster than it was, which means the side they're on will be facing the local star a few hours earlier than expected. As the shuttle is currently parked on ice, that might be bad news, but Reed thinks they've got plenty of time to spare. As they work, T'Pol's invited Tucker to her quarters. He's not quite sure what to expect, so he's as relieved as he is confused when she wants to discuss her problem with him. He's not the ideal choice, but he is the one who already knows about it, and that's close enough. The letter she received told her that her wedding to a lad named Koss, one arranged in childhood to a guy she now hasn't seen in years, will be cancelled if she doesn't immediately leave the Enterprise. She tried delaying it to stay on board, which proper pissed off his parents. They arranged it, you see, and the idea of someone choosing humans over their son is apparently a little more emotion than they're willing to suppress. Tucker tries to be practical, despite his personal dislike of the whole concept of arranged marriages, by saying she could fly home, get wed, and then come back. Unfortunately, it's tradition to spend at least one Vulcan year with a new spouse, however long that is. Ultimately, it's up to what she wants, says Tucker, a position T'Pol disagrees with. She speaks of tradition and heritage and social obligation, all of which sound like T'Pol's already chosen. Tucker's not convinced, likely because she's asking for advice from a human to begin with, and says trying to postpone the wedding in the first place might have been due to more than simply staying on board. Back to the Comet we go, where Reed's time estimates have proven complete and utter bollocks. Travis taking a tumble and needing support doesn't help, but they'd still have been struggling to get back in time with equipment to pack up. The sun rises on the way back, the heat from which is starting to cause issues. We reach the shuttle and try to take off. This ends poorly due to the already weakened floor, and our shuttle ends up underground for the second time in 3 episodes. Maybe Travis is related to Tom Paris. Everybody's alive, though, so the Enterprise pootles over to grab them with its grappling magnets. A call from Captain Akbladder to see if we need a hand is rejected by Archer. Our attempt at magnet fishing is only 50% successful, but Archer thinks that'll be enough. He'd have probably been right, too, if the shuttle hadn't become snagged and those rare minerals weren't buggering up the magnet. Our shuttle falls again and lands even lower than it was before. To make matters worse, the sun which caused everything to start melting has now buggered off again, meaning the hole will shortly start to freeze over. As Archer prepares for another go, T'Pol suggests he might want to call Captain Akbladder after all, as they have a tractor beam that won't be affected by the rare minerals. Archer wants to do this himself, which T'Pol points out is exactly the behavior Captain Akbladder expects of humans. If Archer wants to do what's right, maybe he needs to go against what's expected of him. Reed and Travis are relieved to find themselves being rescued, and surprised it's by a Vulcan tractor beam. Archer gives Captain Akbladder a call to offer the data we've collected from our core samples and shit, but he's not at all asked. Archer's got what he wanted, though, as Akbladder's finally getting ready to bugger off. Tucker assumes that means T'Pol will be going as well, but she asks Archer for permission to send a message for them to take back to Vulcan. Archer agrees, and she goes off to do so, leaving Tucker to decline answering Archer's questions. T'Pol's meditating later in the quarters that she's decided to stay in, so we'll leave her to contemplate her newfound freedom as we get ready to take another step on the long road. We continue our little delves into the crew of the Enterprise by examining T'Pol this episode. What's assumed to be nefarious shenanigans, namely unauthorized and encoded communications, turns out to be something of an entirely personal nature. It's the first nod we've been given of T'Pol even having a life before joining the Enterprise. It's also the first solid indicator of her not being the obedient model Vulcan that you'd expect from someone who many consider to be a spy. You could argue that her compliance when Archer found the Vulcan listening post on Pajem is the first indicator, but I think there's a fair argument to be made for her hands being tied by events during that. This one is unambiguous. Anywho, the result is we viewers knowing that T'Pol has decided to decline her perceived obligations on Vulcan. What that means depends on how you choose to view it. Maybe she decided to stay with us because she'd seen something other Vulcans didn't, or maybe she was using us as an excuse to get out of something she already knew she didn't want. If you're willing to switch into thought experiment mode, there's actually a third option as well. This could all be a plan to ingratiate herself with the crew. Knowing she chose us over her own people would be a good way to deflect suspicion from an actual spy, and a nice juicy encoded message dangled in front of we inquisitive humans would do, well, exactly what it did. The only error was in assuming we uncivilized barbarians would allow the rumor mill to circulate, rather than Tucker keeping it to himself. That's all wild speculation on tenuous evidence, though, so let's shelve it and work with what's actually presented to us. T'Pol has a conflict with the customs of her people, and after Tucker either makes her consider things differently or pisses on her culture, depending on how you want to look at it, she decides maybe tradition is the argument people use when they don't have any genuinely good reasons. The A and B plots both carry much the same moral, in fact, that principle of expected behavior and obligation. Archer's attitude was that he needed to act in a specific way, that partly for himself, sure, but also as an obligation to his species and proving we humans can handle ourselves without oversight. He listens to T'Pol's argument that this behavior is precisely the reason why Vulcans consider us brash and reckless, and changes course as a result of that input. T'Pol feels compelled to follow tradition as an obligation to her species to prove Vulcans are disciplined. She listens to Tucker's argument that she has a greater obligation to her own free will, and changes course as a result of that input. Both grow by listening to the opinions of others, arguably avoiding very costly mistakes in the process. As morals go, it's certainly not a terrible one. Time for a poke at some of the details from this episode then, and all to do with T'Pol's betrothal. Let's start with the whole concept and give a very brief touch on the ethics. Vulcans call them arranged marriages, but I'm not convinced that's an accurate label. The threat of social stigma if refused, something T'Pol grapples with in this episode, makes a strong case for it being forced rather than arranged, and that's without even touching on the expectation being placed during childhood. If you're not free to choose without consequences, that's the very definition of coercion. Let's put the ethics to one side, though, as I suspect the topic, and its implications for Vulcan society, could be the focus of an entire video. Instead, what occurred to me during the episode is that the custom of arranged marriages could be a deliberate method of removing emotion from the equation. The matter of a mate is possibly the most likely to cause issues on that front, so from a purely logical point of view, an assigned pairing seems the best way of ensuring no personal desire is involved. Quite how that works in practice is another matter, of course, especially when the topic is so potentially heated that even the adults who arranged it are willing to get pissy. Speaking of which, let's end with a chat about T'Pol's prospective husband's family. We're told their insistence is due to seeing her request as an affront, the idea of choosing humans over their son being a serious insult. But what if it's more? What if somebody important wanted them to force the issue? Somebody who's learned what just happened at a certain Vulcan monastery/listening post, for example. Why, such a person might have started wondering if having an observer on Earth's first deep exploration craft is really worth the trade-off of her being in a position to help such an unpredictable force as humans. End of episode.
So, how's the test going then?
Well, a little over 50% of the ship's vital equipment is on fire, so I'd say results were mixed.
Oh, that's what's burning, is it? You know, I've missed the smell of smoke since leaving Voyager.
Nostalgia aside, I think we can probably rule this out as an option for helping our mutiny.
Is that the official medical opinion from our doctor, mate?
He was too busy having fun to offer his input, something about behavioral studies.
Clearly a true man of science.
He was giggling like a toddler.
Don't begrudge him enjoying his work. Anyway, I guess we've learned all we need to. You'd best get on phone to him and tell him to start pumping out the antidote.
The what?
You know, the stuff to counteract the hallucinogen.
Ah.
Oh, woof.